Welcome back to Daily DVR with TopShelf Fandom. My name is Axel, and Justin and I have a great show for you today. Remember, Daily DVR is a proud member of the DVR Podcast Network. Check us out, dvrpodcast.com. Justin, welcome back, brother. Tell the good people where they can find you and say hello.
Thank you for having me on, and happy to be here. I am Justin Thomas. You can find me at the TopShelf Fandom channel on YouTube and all the social media links if you're watching this in my video below. And I believe Axel puts them in the podcast link as well. So thanks for having me on. Yeah, TopShelf Fandom. Yeah. Subscribe.
TopShelf Fandom. You've been what have you been covering lately? You've been doing some Viking stuff. Tell us the past couple of things that you did, brother.
Well, I've been working on Vikings. I've devised a new system of ups and downs for reviews of shows because I always struggle with trying to ride that fine line of doing a pompous explain video or having a video that's just me ranting. So I figured out this just going with what I liked and what I didn't like. Sounds simple, it is. I give certain parts up, certain parts down. I say why I think it deserves up or down, and then I feel like the audience can see the score on screen and they can dispute it, and it opens up the conversation and the dialogue that I want to have happening anyways. And so I've been working on that. I unfortunately was not feeling well for quite a bit, so I am 3 episodes behind. I have them all in the can, but I have to combine the episodes. So a lot of Vikings. I also tomorrow have a live stream that is comparing Braveheart and The Outlaw King. We have Costume Co., who is a professional costume designer, coming on not to only talk about the actual costumes in both Braveheart and The Outlaw King and talk about who did what better or who did it well and who didn't do it well, but we'll talk about the context of the movie as well. So yeah.
We didn't do our pre-roll ad because we're going to roll right into it, kind of an ad for cufflinks.com, our presenting sponsor, of course, here at Daily DVR. And last week I put out a call, and that call was to win these right here. Awesome. Let me adjust the camera so I can actually see my view. Right here, these Stormtrooper cufflinks.com cufflinks. They're so awesome. And I just want to show how thick they are. That's the thing about these. It's like they're so thick. They're such great quality. I love them. And anyway, I put out the call and I said, send in a email, rate or review us, iTunes, whatever. Send in an email showing that you subscribe to the show, because I had covered this article that said that the real measure of podcasting is subscriptions, not reviews on iTunes. And I got a bunch of them. I got way more than I thought I would, and I was really happy about it. And it really made me feel great that so many people are listening. And so many people are also happy to get some awesome stuff from cufflinks.com and use our DVR20 code as well. You can go ahead and do that. That's cufflinks.com/DVR. Use the code DVR20 to get 20% off at any time your order, regardless of the cost, no minimum. And I got all these emails, and I want to congratulate Michelle. Michelle from Michigan, no last name, Michelle from Michigan. She wrote in and showed me that she had subscribed on Spotify, showed me a screenshot there from her phone.
Tangible
so Michelle,
proof. Nice.
Tangible proof.
In from Michigan. I'm from there. Good job.
Michigan,
shout out.
Baby. Michigan. And she has won these cufflinks.com Star Wars Stormtrooper cufflinks. We're celebrating Star Wars month. Use the code SWGIFTS to get 30% off Star Wars. And I want to roll right in from Michelle winning. We have a Facebook group, and I had said last week that I was going to go and just give out something. I didn't know how, and I decided to just go through the list. I used this randomizer that my friend Arif had showed me and put everybody's name in that's in our Facebook group, and they are right now about to win this. This is a Yoda tie from cufflinks.com. Go to cufflinks.com/DVR so they know that we sent you. And this awesome, how does it look on camera? Can you see it good,
it's
Justin?
It's a little shiny, but it looks good.
I mean, I don't want to take it out of the thing.
I can put a graphic up in the actual video.
It looks great. You can actually go look up Daily DVR on your Facebook. Join. It's a closed group, so you got to request because we don't want all that spam.
It's
join.
Exclusive.
It's exclusive, baby. And next time you will be entered as well to win something, because I want to keep on doing these Facebook giveaways. And the winner of this tie right now, live on the show, is an old friend, a great listener, and a guy who also has been doing an album a day on Facebook. So this is kind of, it's happenstance. I always find a reason to tie in the winner to something. And it is Dennis Hoxie. And Dennis, you are the man. I love your Facebook posts, and you have joined our Facebook group, and you are the winner of the Yoda tie. So today, Dennis wins the Yoda tie. Michelle is winning the cufflinks. Yeah, baby.
Stormtrooper cufflinks. When you're wearing those, you just can't miss. Get it? Because they miss all the time.
Yeah, I know. I like that, though. That was a good one, Justin.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
I was going to do a Yoda impression. Where tie you do? So that's not as good.
Yeah. The tie you wear.
Yeah.
So thank you, cufflinks.com. Great sponsor. And today, so you all know, today is the final day of the 12 days of sales, and it's Game of Thrones. So you got to go over to cufflinks.com/DVR. Check out their Game of Thrones products. Use the code BESTGIFTS to get 30% off today only. And we're rolling into more sales and more stuff as we go on. So that's it, everybody. Thank you, everyone that entered. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to know how many people are listening to the show. I really do appreciate it. I appreciate you, Justin. And
thank you.
Congratulations to Dennis and Michelle. You did. You deserve it.
I was waiting.
Congratulations, Dennis. Congratulations, Michelle. You won it. This is awesome, dude. I love giving this. I got more stuff, too. I got to give you something to give away on your – we're going to talk about it. We forgot to. When we're done, we're going to pick something, and next time – and I'll send some pics. And then next time you do anything you do, the Vikings cast, anything you're doing, I'm going to give you something to give away, and then I'll just send it out to that
Let's
person.
Wait to see if I do a good job on this podcast, then I get anything off the top shelf.
Okay. All right. So everybody go to the Facebook page and judge Justin when I post this.
Yeah. Be personal, too. Dive into it. Have a go at me, people. I need it. I need to learn. You know what I mean? So, trust me, I'm not that great of a guy. Let me have it.
You're the best.
I deserve it.
Well, I just want to say again, cufflinks.com, thank you so much. This sponsorship means a lot to everybody, and it's just awesome to be able to give this stuff away, and that it's connected to what we do, the Game of Thrones stuff. And actually, we're kind of going to eschew the format today. Like I said, I did watch that episode of Vikings, but I'm going to save that because we're just going to have a kind of a little talk about what we've been up to a little bit, and then we're going to get into a larger discussion about media. And it kind of does involve Game of Thrones and books and film and how people basically, the media being the message, the medium being the message. But before we do that, Justin, I want to give you a chance to talk a little bit more because I've been yapping so much. What have you been up to, man? Anything you want to kind of talk about, chat about before we get into the big topic? You've been watching anything, looking at anything, hearing anything?
Yeah, I have been. I was unfortunately, like I said, out of the game for about a week and a half. Just was, I got some health stuff going on. But that did give me an opportunity to listen to Fire and Blood in its entirety. The new George R.R. Martin novel, not Winds of Winter, but I actually almost didn't. I definitely would love Winds of Winter, but I actually love the lore of A Song of Ice and Fire so much that I almost enjoy these books like the one behind me, A World of Ice and Fire, and Fire and Blood. I wouldn't say more, but just as much, because it's just, he paints such a beautiful picture of this world, and it just makes you so much more immersed when you can actually get an idea of the history of this beautiful, world that he has conjured up and these people in it. So yeah, I really enjoyed that, as well as watching a lot of documentaries on a lot of the Scottish history behind the time of their revolution, whatever you want to call it, for the stream that we have going tomorrow for the Outlaw King vs. Braveheart. Doing a lot of that, just buffing up on some history. And I watch weird documentaries on history just nonstop anyways. So yeah, a lot of that, and watching Vikings and doing a lot of breakdowns of that, and then continuing on my other projects. So yeah, just kind of been sitting back and absorbing.
Yeah, man. I've been listening to Fire and Blood. I've been talking about it on the podcast. And first off, shout out to Mushroom. Shout out to Mushroom because I don't know. Let me ask you this. You're a book guy. Is Mushroom a part of any other books? Was he mentioned before Fire and Blood?
And I could be wrong here. I don't believe so, but he definitely could have been. I'm probably wrong about that.
Okay, because I don't know if you were kind of cheering along for Mushroom as I was as the book was going along. Like every time he mentioned Mushroom, I would just start laughing, and he would just be like, "Mushroom has a very different version of events, if we are to believe." And I think that if he isn't already, Mushroom is got to be like a favorite character. He must have known what he was doing while he was writing and creating this character. And I guess it's kind of George too. Like I guess because Tyrion's supposed to be George too, right? Like whenever it's like kind of a shorter little person, it's really George.
Yeah, any type of person that's it's
the bastard,
bastards, cripples, broken things. Yeah, he is. The Victor and George's stories are always the recluse, the damaged one. That Bran is the embodiment of what George views as a hero. He doesn't make the jocks. Jaime Lannister doesn't come out on top. He might come out all right, but he's not the guy that nobody wins the day by being athletic, handsome, or anything like that, because George didn't consider himself to be any of those things. So
yeah,
but no, sure. I love the different viewpoints because it's something I've talked about before. It kind of goes along with our larger theme here about the medium, but when reading historical accounts, it's always important to look at who wrote it, why they wrote it, when they wrote it, and so forth. Especially when looking at like Viking accounts, meaning the Danes invading England. You have a lot of Saxon accounts that are obviously written from the Saxon point of view. You need to know what audience they were writing that for, why they wrote it, when they wrote it, and so forth. So I love the different maesters' takes on history because it's all very subjective in Fire and Blood, because these are people that are everybody that is huge into the series knows that the maesters have their own agenda. So in maesters differ amongst themselves as well. So it's very relevant and accurate to our real world history of just source accounts and being biased, and source accounts having agendas. And people they're writing for a reason. Who are they writing it for? Who wrote it? When they wrote it? So forth. Is very important. So I love the different perspectives. And I think that's really a big point of Fire and Blood, is to make us question a little bit of the, at least the excellence of Aegon's conquest, the purity of it, because we do see that it's very obviously polished up. It's sweetened a little bit from these maesters.
Yeah, dude. I love what you're saying there, and I love that perspective of history and relating it to our own history and how we view it. And one of the things that George captures so well that I was told about, obviously because I'm not a book reader, but from watching the TV show and listening to so many podcasts about it and everything, is the way that he kind of breaks down the mythologies and breaks down the legends into reality. And that is a thing that, before we got on, we were talking a little bit, and I know we don't want to get too much into real world politics here, but you see this kind of the difference between a society that has these legends, what they really represent, and do the legends and the lores and the exaltation of the past, sometimes it can help the present. It can help to give a foundation of belief and of trust from people in government. And sometimes it can do the reverse.
Yep.
And it's exalting something that is actually at the heart of what's wrong with a nation or a place. And that's what I think George captures so well in telling the story of the Targaryens and kind of showing, like, Like, I like the part where he uses the term exceptionalism, Targaryen exceptionalism, and how they're allowed to be married for brother and sister because they're Targaryens.
Yeah, they must be preserved. The
Yes.
bloodline must be preserved.
They're not people, right? They're different. They have silver hair and purple eyes.
Yes.
And then later, when one dies and they're so I don't want to give it away, but of the disease, they face mushroom gave it to. They face the public backlash of, well, wait, I thought Targaryens were above us. They're not. They're just human, but they're just a little bit different. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, and it's beautiful because the Fire and Blood, you know, like the Targaryens, and this happened in the real world as well, the desire to preserve a pure bloodline, actually, because they are bound to their dragons through the Valyrian blood. So their idea of this is that they keep it pure, they have a better bond with their dragon, but they become mad just like real monarchs in Europe did because of the inbreeding, because of the issues that come syphilis too. But I mean, all jokes aside, yeah, syphilis was a big issue. All the greats and all the worst had it. But yeah,
STDs, babe. It's funny, you know, they there's that book that was written a couple of years ago about the landing of the white man in America, and how disease and like how basically, you know, we talk about the decimation of the Native Americans, which is very true, of course.
We won through disease by the spreading.
Yes, that is something that people. Exactly. And I mean, that was later done on purpose when they figured out that it was happening already naturally. Yeah. And it's just things like that, disease and things like that get lost throughout history. So that's a digression, but I wanted to agree with you. I like the way George picks up on these things too, you know? If we were to believe this, you know, it's awesome, man.
Well, it's also really important to like, and it's something I'm working on for us to, and it's something I've been really interested in recently because we open up the series. Let's just talk about the show in the book, but let's just stick to the show. Just understanding really the Starks' POV, their view of how things should be. You know, we see right away the Walkers are real, and then we see this honorable family that is still, Ned Stark is just I'm doing it because that's what we're supposed to do. I am going to be honorable because this is what my society considers honorable, and I'm going to do the right thing. So we are seeing everything through the point of view of the Starks, and we hear about these Targaryens and we meet them, and they're coming back to restore this great rule. So it's like we're living in the post-Targaryen world in our current series. So I think it's really important to understand what Dany's, actual desire is. Like, she wants to bring back Targaryen rule. We hear about the Mad King, but what was really Targaryen? What was this 300 years of that dynasty? So that's why I love Fire and Blood, because we get a real picture of the politicking, of the ups and downs of the Targaryen rule, and we get an idea because people would have maybe people are going to want the Targaryens to come back. You know, there are people that are so loyal to them. So it's interesting to understand, you know, I mean, because you got to think about that. That's 300 years. That's more than the United States has been a country. So, it's a fairly large amount of time for a dynasty to rule. So it's really important to understand that rule. So I think even show watchers only would really like Fire and Blood, and it's really advantageous to watch it. But yeah, everything as far as the Targaryens trying to preserve their power and losing power because of that, that's everybody. The Starks try to have power through honor, and they lose it through their, being too honorable. So he does it with every family.
Fatal flaw, right?
Yeah.
Your fatal, your the thing that your crutch, the thing that keeps you up is what knocks you down, baby. I've been saying the same thing, Justin. I think that it's wonderful that this book came out now. I'm really happy about it. I know book readers are waiting for, of course, The Winds of Winter. That's the next book, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And everybody's waiting for it. And I think some people were disappointed. Why is he writing this now? And blah, blah, blah. But I just have to say that with the announcement of the prequel, the coming of the final season, I've just been telling everybody, even if you're not a book reader, and we're going to get into this too, to listen to the audiobook if you're not a book reader person, because this book is so perfect for that format. It is a history lesson. Like, literally, imagine a funny, cool, interesting history professor, and you are chilling on your couch while they recount history to you, but not in a boring way. They include all the fun parts and the sex and the violence and the emotions and the drama of it, along with the politics and the battles. And one thing I was surprised about, and I want to relate this to a poll that was on the Twitter. I think it was Joe the Magician, YouTuber, I think. Does he do YouTube?
He's a YouTuber, yes.
He's a YouTuber. And he had a poll: if you could take one thing out of A Song of Ice and Fire, what would you take out of it? And like number one was magic. And then like far behind it, people had like politics, but people seem to really like the battles. And I'm not a huge military person. I don't really, I've just never been really that interested in the specifics of battles. But I have to say, the way in which they're described in Fire and Blood, and I don't know if it's the same for A Song of Ice and Fire, I did enjoy it because it's specific enough without getting into minutia of, you know, they were carrying a bow that had 5 on the quiver. And, you know, like, I don't really care about weapons. I know some people like really get into weapons and stuff. That's just not my thing. But it's enough to keep you interested, right?
Yeah, they're not like going over quartermaster accounts.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
We need more flax bundles.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. He's not saying like, in a specific incident inside this castle where this happened.
Because it is their points of view. So we do have characters in this book. It's a historical accounting, but like Mushroom and all that. So you get to see like the type of people that they are, because the way in which they convey this story is very telling about themselves. So themselves. Wow, I wish I didn't say that. They not getting any better. Move on. But yeah, no, it's beautiful, and the immersion of it is great. Yeah, I hope the books come out too. I've said it a million times. I just unfortunately don't think they will. But this is what George is good with, and he had a lot of this already because of the book. For you video watchers, which I think video is pretty cool. You should subscribe to my channel. You can see behind me A World of Ice and Fire. A lot of this was cut from there because it was too much, so they had to cut it out. So he had a good amount of this.
Okay.
Now, I'll remind you, he's still not probably going to finish the books, and if you're mad about that, you probably do have a bone to pick. But
don't you think this is perfect timing though, Justin, with the final season and the prequel announced, this type of book, right?
Yeah, because Dany is trying to restore Targaryen rule.
Yeah.
You know, like, what was Targaryen rule? It's not just the Mad King, you know? There was good and bad. You know, every time a Targaryen's born, they flip a coin, you know? So it's important to understand what they're trying to accomplish, or what they think they're trying to accomplish, because her idea of Targaryen rule is also different. But I always think in my head, what do the people of Westeros feel about the rule of King Robert? What do they feel about the usurper that took away the Targaryen rule? There's probably, in the books, there are a lot of loyalists. You know, so I mean, it is what it is. It's like our revolution. There was a lot more people than our school system will teach you that really liked British rule at the time. They just didn't want to go to war. So I mean, it goes both ways. It's important to understand the two sides. So it's perfect.
It is. And that's why it's so cool too, that having come from the world of the show, and where you see Dany and the Targaryens and the dragons and the fire and the blood, it's so mysterious, and the way it's spoken of, you know, the Mad King and all this, it's very distant, right? Mm-hmm. We're really more ensconced with the Starks and the Lannisters, you know? And this book to be really solely about the Targaryens, that's what it's about, and their kings and queens and princesses and all their hanger-ons and attachments, it does give you that, it kind of demystifies that as a TV watcher. And it makes you understand better, like you're saying, Dany's journey. And you also see, honestly, the cyclical nature of this story, and the way that George so intelligently rips from real history the cyclical nature of wars and battles. And for me, being a big fan, I shouldn't say a big fan, but I I have studied a lot of the Vietnam War, and leading up to it and after it, including the history of Vietnam itself.
Yeah.
And I know for George, the Vietnam War was a focal point of his life, and it really changed him in many ways. And a lot of his opinions were formed with that, not solely, but, you know, it's a basis.
The idea of establishing, you know, peace through chaos.
Yeah, and also the fact of seeing like how the Chinese came, the French came in, the Americans came, like how he sees the way certain lands are that, and in a sense, Westeros is a conquered land.
Yes.
Conquered by the Targaryens. And what we're seeing in the show is actually they're finally out. You know what I mean? Like after hundreds of years, we're seeing the part where they're not there.
And so how are they faring?
Yeah.
You know, that's why I always like to, I had a conversation with In Deep Geek about this on a live stream recently. Sorry if I cut you off. I love that point, because I always I would take the walkers out of this scenario and think, okay, what would be happening right now if they weren't forced to deal with them? And that's why the Targaryen dynasty is so interesting to me, because it's not, I think it's just like you said, like George always has layered characters and his stories have many layers. So we can't just think of the Targaryen rule as good or bad, but I think most casual viewers would think that it was just bad. They just, because I mean, that's basically the information they've been given, you know, so the thought of Dany wanting to restore like this like heinous rule is not accurate either. You know, there is, you know, we see through this, we see the politicking, which I really like, of making sure to go to Maiden Pool.
Yes.
For the visit, the smaller lords, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they use their dragons for diplomatic reasons. You know what I mean? Like not only
she has a different view too. Not, you know what I mean? That's interesting. Like when you're saying that generally we hear, right? So our thought when we first meet Ned and Robert and everything is that damn girl's going to bring these dragons over here and kill us all, Ned. You know, and there's this fear because the dragons are the nukes, right? Yeah. Like they are the thing that they can use over everyone, and they use differently. Some subtle, some not, and with different levels of success. So we have this idea that Dany is going to come over, you're right, and destroy everything. But then through listening to this, you see that's not true at all. The Targaryens are just people. And the dragon in this magical element is seen differently by different people and used differently by them. But also, Dany herself has this idea of who she is that is really legend, you know, and has little to do with the actual events that we're now hearing told, if we believe them.
She is Fire and Blood. Hard times with the hope of
exactly.
You know, she did in the books.
She had to rely on those.
Yes, rely on this almost mythical, like, you know, whatever idea of, you know, just the destiny is hers, you know, that she is destined to rule and all this, but she still goes about it in a way, I feel, for the most part, that she is trying to rule justly, you know what I mean? But yeah, no, I think that's why it's really important to realize that George made a point to show us almost, you know, for almost the entire first book, you know, it's really stark POV in their view of the world, because it paints the Lannisters as bad guys and it paints the Targaryens in a bad light because of what happened. And it's all from their perspective, how they would view the world and those in it. Then you start to get the POVs later on after, you know, some Starks start dying off, of Jaime and so forth, where you get to see his change, but you wouldn't have had him, you know, pegged as a bad guy if you wouldn't have had all of Ned's POVs and all the Stark's POVs. Yeah, so they made sure to wait. You know what I mean? His timing with the change of the POVs is perfect.
Yeah, and I that's something that I want to experience, and I've already. It's hard for me. I gotta say, it is easier in my modern, and maybe we can kind of transition into our conversation about how you, the medium and the message and all that. Because for me, I grew up as a reader. I literally had a license plate that said "read" on my first car.
Weird, actually.
It was kind of a joke because my friend Bob and I, who was my kind of first or second filmmaking partner, were into like subliminal. It was like, you've already read it. Like, I've commanded you. It was like a weird kind of, I don't know. We got it from,
they read it and they're like, oh, you wasted my time.
No, it was also saying read more. Like, because when I was a kid, I was very much convinced that people were very dumb. And unfortunately, life has not proved me wrong. No offense to anybody watching. You're all smart.
Except for the dumb ones, if there are dumb ones. Yeah.
Just people need to educate them. Like, think a little bit first. But anyway, it's hard for me to read these days something prolonged like that because I have a kid. And I really spend more of my time. Oh, I love her. One day you'll be. Well, in some ways it is a curse. My children are not a burden. I am doing dishes. I'm folding laundry. I'm walking to pick him up from school. I'm going grocery shopping. I'm cooking dinner. Yeah, I'm a house dad. That's what I am. I'm Mr. Mom. I do it all. I know where all the dishes are, and I cook and I plan and I do all the meal stuff, all that kind of stuff. That's my job, as well as doing this podcast. And I can't really sit down and by the time it's at night and I want to sit down and read, honestly, I'm tired and my eyes are tired. So I've been listening to the audiobook, and it is absolutely transporting and wonderful. And I am definitely rolling. Whichever one I can get first, I'm either rolling into the world of Ice and Fire, or I'm rolling back into a Game of Thrones, and I'm going to start listening to them. And but my question is, after I'm done listening to them, do I consider myself a book reader? I didn't read the book. It is a different experience, right?
It is. Well, I guess I'll approach this on two levels. I think that the stigma of those book readers, which I did read the books just like everybody else in the world. But the prestige is a little bit, whatever. It doesn't make anybody any better. I would recommend it. But when it comes down to, I do consider listening to audiobooks. You're consuming literature. You're consuming it through a different medium, which is what we're talking about here. And how much does the medium change the impact of the content? I would say, and I'm not a psychologist, but I would argue that this Fire and Blood is really good for an audiobook, like we said, because it really is an accounting. So you're not needing to be immersed as much, if that makes any sense. You don't need to be immersed into these characters as much because you're hearing about events. So it's kind of just, obviously it's an accounting. But I would say that probably physically reading the books isn't, for me personally, just speaking for myself, I'm not as efficient when it comes to me having the physical book reading, because I will, get whatever distracted, set it down. With an audiobook, it's always playing. So you just are like, it's kind of like you're forcing yourself. It's harder, it's much harder to sit there and physically hold the book and keep it.
Yeah, you have to
do anything. I know it might sound silly, but there is a benefit to that as well, because I do feel like when you're not just listening to somebody else's voice, but when you're reading and you're internalizing it, you are doing this narrative in your mind. So you are creating the story and fabricating it to a very large degree, actually, yourself. So I do think that there's a larger level of immersion when you would physically read a book than when you listen. But I would say that, what are you going to say? You're an audiobook reader? I mean, that's just silly.
I'm a listener. It's interesting, though, because you sent me over a couple of articles. One was from Variety, The Evolution of Compelling Storytelling in the Digital Age. It was actually from 2017. And another article that you had sent over from Buddhist Inquiry. How is the medium changing the message? And it was talking a little bit about Marshall McLuhan. And we were having an interesting conversation about that, about how McLuhan, who was a Canadian thinker and philosopher, and Hail Canada, of course, creators of so much great original ideas about media. And he had the famous expression, the medium is the message, and basically saying that the way we're receiving things tells us a lot about them, and sometimes even more than what we're receiving, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of his work was based on TV and news and how we experience things.
That was his internet.
Yes, exactly. Going past, I mean, he traced it back, of course, to like the Gutenberg, the press, you know what I'm saying? And like the change from the word to radio to television. And then his kind of prediction, which is true now, we see the global village, which is totally true. We see that with social media and everything. But then we can distill it down even to something like this, where now we have a choice of multiple mediums for the same message. So now we can put really to task and to test those ideas of how something coming to you differently changes that thing. And it made me think of that too when I'm thinking about, am I a book reader? Because I know the experience of reading a book. And it is harder. You have to kind of break through another wall in your mind. It's even, to me, I relate it to psychedelic drugs and LSD, marijuana, things that change your perception of reality, right? McLuhan also.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I've only done crack cocaine. I haven't done LSD.
Hey, crack is whack, baby. That's what I always say. Keep it back. Crack is whack. But it's so interesting because, like we were talking about before we started, I was saying like that feeling you get when you watch a movie with people and you leave the movie theater and you're kind of tripping. Yes. But then when you turn off the Blu-ray in your house, you're more thinking than you are feeling. You know what I mean? And so that relates to the book versus audiobook thing. When I'm reading, I feel like I'm feeling more immersed. And when I'm listening, I feel like I'm thinking more. Yes. I'm processing information.
I mean, your brain can only do so much. Some brains work better than others. It depends how much crack cocaine you've had that day. But, I think it's really interesting. I think that you find an argument here for people trying to say one medium is better than the other. I think it's really important just to realize how much the medium factors in. I wouldn't say any medium's better than another. It's just so vastly different. I find it so fascinating to think about how, because I write, like I always say, you'll probably never see something finished by me because I'm incompetent. But the creation of stories is very fascinating to me. The people that create stories is, I look at their stories and I can really, I try to read into what that means about them. Like George, I look at his story and I kind of have an idea in my head. I don't know if it's true or not, what type of person he is, but the medium in which you choose to convey your story is very intriguing as well. So, I mean, right now we're dealing with a different type of age of, with the technology that we have. It's no longer the issue of like, okay, newspapers can't be distributed worldwide, so we'll try radio. Then they got satellite, television, blah, blah, blah. Now literature, visual art, audio, like, so you got your movies, radio, art, whatever, newspapers, all available to the world. It's no longer a rat race. So now it's like, what is the medium in which you choose to convey or vice versa, consume this actual story? And it's very interesting on how vastly different these experiences are. And it's an argument that can go even further into it. Not only do you have, a film, so they chose, you'd say they went the visual route, but then how is that film structured? Is it 3 acts? Because that's also another medium. The way in which we structure our stories, genres. Yeah, is it sci-fi? Is it a thriller? Is this an action movie? Is this a love romantic?
What you're saying is plays into the discussions we've had about the differences between binging or streaming things. How the medium. Just recently, I've been talking a lot about Homecoming, and did you check that out on Amazon yet? Have you seen that?
No, I'm not.
Super interesting. It's from Sam Esmail, who did Mr. Robot, Julia Roberts, breakout role by the guy who plays the star Walter, fantastic actor, and it messes with format and length too. It's like it's a half-hour drama. It is a straight-up drama. It is not a comedy. There's no way that someone like Atlanta is kind of like a comedy drama. It's a half hour. It totally breaks the format convention. It is a straight-up drama. Yeah. It is serious and emotional. And some of the episodes are 23 minutes. Some of them are 37. And I was reading a little bit about Esmail. He also plays around with aspect ratio, and the idea of it uses a lot of it is shot in an iPhone portrait format, which some reviewers have actually mistaken for standard TV style, like 3x4. It's not. That's not 4x3. That's not what it is. Actually, it's iPhone style, and what that says about it. So it's so interesting when watching that, just like you're saying, here I expect that kind of 3-act, like even that 3-act structure within the format of one episode of TV. And I expect it to be of certain lengths and with breaks for TV. So when you do something that's a half hour and it doesn't have that, how does it feel? And really, you know how it ends up feeling to me? It's wholly original. Like he's just doing what he wants and breaking these conventions as though we're coming out of the other side of what McLuhan was talking about, to the point in which the creators are no longer oblivious that the medium is the message. They are using that as the message as well. You know, and
this has been cycling through. I love what you're saying. Yeah. Because I believe it's just going to continue to go around in a circle and cycle through this process of us breaking the formalities. And then again, what we're doing right now, the platforms that we're on right now, is us breaking the formalities and breaking the, the conservative approach to, conventional approach. Sorry, to media, and eventually falling back into a tightly formatted, actual medium. What I mean is, you had filmmakers at first that were indie filmmakers, essentially the first ones, because they were just figuring out how to do it. Then you have the studio age, right, where the studios come. That's where you get your very cookie cutter westerns and your 3-act structures, and it was format. Like all of it was a formula, and they were pumping it out because it's also commerce. They're also, making money.
Everything was a formula, right?
Not only then it went back to the auteur age with, you have all of your directors that come out. You start having Hitchcock, and your directors are now stars. So then they went, like you said, and they started breaking the conventions. But then it circles back to being just
the 80s.
Even YouTube, everybody says, because YouTube is interesting because we almost look at high production value. Like when YouTube first started, the first thing you always try to do is just embody like what was before. So television, everybody used green screens behind them. You see all those shitty green screens. People didn't like that. People said, we want authentic. So then now we got authentic, and we have people that are just, you can argue, we don't have time for it, but it being saturated and there's too much, blah, 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 the quantity issue. But the point is, people think that things that are very, very polished these days, they don't trust them because of, our modern media today. They think that when they see something that looks really good, that there's people behind it that are, trying to push a message, and it's not a true portrayal of beliefs or ideas, propaganda. So you run into this issue of, what is authentic, what is not, in the riding the fine line between, having a really high quality product and not being looked at as like some corporate, slave. But what is happening too, like I was talking with you earlier, now us independent creators are also going to fall into a very formal format, a very structured format, because the algorithm dictates how we produce content. We will eventually become essentially what network TV is, because we are dictated by the medium. I don't agree with McLuhan on the medium is actually stronger than the message, because I think the message is obviously still there. I don't see where he's going with that. I see where he's going, I just don't agree. But I think it's so important to look into his works because it's exactly what's happening now. And it's like a vicious cycle of breaking the formalities and then falling back into just another conventional, very rigid, structured format. And it's something that I guess it's like, it's just your choice to say, how can I tell the story that I want to tell the best? I think the what if game. If you only have an hour to tell a story, like say you're just talking to your grandchild and you want to tell them one story and you only have a certain amount of time with them, how are you going to do that? You know what I mean? Like if you're going to tell the story around a campfire, if you're going to tell the story in an editorial, I think it's fun to like workshop it. Like if that makes sense.
No, I do. And I think you see a lot of that experimentation going on. And I think that I remember in 1999 when I worked for a magazine called Response Magazine, which was about infomercials really, but I attempted to kind of change it into interactive television and the internet and stuff. People were just starting, that's 20 years ago now, people were just starting to have the idea of like web content for like a movie. Like I remember American Psycho with Christian Bale and I wrote an article about it for something called iMarketing News, which I don't think is around anymore. But I interviewed their team that was involved with it, and it was the first time someone had ever released a portion of a movie that wasn't included in the movie that had done additional shooting for something on the web. And they basically did like a little like scene with Christian Bale that they shot. Like it took him 2 seconds. He just like looks into the camera and says something, whatever. But it was just for the internet. And it was this big deal about how it was on the internet and experimentation. That's just the idea that we're living through a time where things change so rapidly, where technology is changing so rapidly that you're right. It's less about the medium being the message than the idea that the medium is the message. Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
That people, I don't even understand what a Snapchat story is. When Facebook,
it's good. If you have Snapchat and you're over 30, I believe you're a pervert.
Yeah, I don't understand, dude. When Facebook asked me to add it to my story, I'm like, I have a story. It's my time. What is my fucking story? But kids understand this stuff. And like I was saying to you, my son, when I was growing up, the idea of wearing headphones and watching a moving image did not exist. Okay, the only way you could do that is if you had one of these tiny little handheld junky TVs with a magnifying screen and you had headphones into it. And my dad used to bring that. We'd watch it at the Jets game so we could listen to the play-by-play, because the play-by-play on TV we liked better than the radio play-by-play. But that was the only time that happened. My son has the pair of studio headphones, plug here, that are wireless, and he watches tons of stuff like that, and that's so much more immersive.
Yeah.
So when he watches like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer or something on Netflix, he is actually experiencing and hearing parts of it that I didn't. He's actually hearing it in stereo. I watched it on a fucking little TV that had one speaker in the middle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So there's the convenience, and then there's also the advantages. I don't think convenience always goes hand in hand. Like that's a good example of it going hand in hand with actual increase in the experience of the quality of the experience. But I think what's important to look at is how we have. Like I always watch with captions on because I like to catch everything, but we have to think about when we have stories being told in a serialized format, our sitcoms, episodic series, the medium demands that they are going to have just not a lot of like resolution in the overall series until the very end. Like think Friends or whatever, 13 seasons. That story is being conveyed on a medium that is going to change the very fabric of it, because there's no way that they can just they're trying to pump out episodes is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
So you have a serialized show, your medium is heavily dictating it, opposed to a Netflix show, because a Netflix series, it's maybe only going to get greenlit for one season. So they have to at least complete that season and complete an arc and be happy with the product. A serialized, drama like Big Bang Theory or something. That's not a drama. It's a dumpster fire show. But, these are just shows that are just going to be trying to entertain for as long as possible.
Yeah.
And put it out.
You're totally right, brother.
We were speaking about the films a few episodes ago, and I forget his name, but he was complaining about, peak TV, and he said that films offer something,
Madden.
They just can't. Yes.
Right.
And I did, because I always try to look at both sides, and I completely disagreed with his comments at the time, and I still pretty much do. But I was thinking about what you were saying about films and the communal experience. When you're watching things on Netflix and even on HBO, which we have now on demand and can watch over and over, you may not be as attentive as you would when you're in a theater, because you can't just go and recap it.
You have to make that choice yourself, right? And it puts the onus on you. Like we're talking about with going back to the beginning with the reading, you have to make different level, a choice of immersion. And today you have those choices, right? And the interesting thing that I find about, there's the old Chinese saying, may you live in interesting times. And sometimes that can be a blessing and sometimes it can be a curse. And I think as far as storytelling and mediums and media goes, we live in wonderful, I don't like to say, I hate it when people are like, it's a blessing. I guess that's from living in North Carolina too much. Oh, you're there right now.
Yeah,
say hi to Lars for me.
Oh, bless you.
There's some fun. Yeah, I hate when people say that because they don't really mean that. Like, bless your heart. But basically, what I'm trying to say is you're making the choice, right? It puts the onus on you. There was a great article this week by Tim Goodman of The Hollywood Reporter, Bastard Machine. I mentioned a little bit. Actually, I think it was last week. And he was saying that he feels his job as a critic now is not so much to be a critic like it used to be, like I give this an A or a B. Yeah. It's actually to be a curator, to curate the whole experience, and not only curating as far as genre, but also as far as medium. Like, okay, you can stream this on Facebook, but you need to have the Roku app. Like, you have to explain to people not only what they're watching, right? But how they can watch it. And then also sometimes, like you're explaining, how what you're watching it on changed what you're watching. Like, why did Sam Esmail do 27-minute episodes and then a 35-minute episode? It's because Amazon said you could do whatever you want. So you have to kind of explain that in the review, right? Because if you don't, then it's part of the whole experience.
It's continuing on the dialogue. And we have always, since the beginning of time, yearned to be immersed in the story and to come to our own conclusions about what even a piece of art means. I think Cubism and you're an artist, so is a great example of that, of why it was so popular. Picasso's Cubism is because it was something that people looked at and they interpreted it. It wasn't somebody telling you this is what this is. Even though there's a guy next to you at the art gallery saying this is what this is. But you know what I mean? Like, people really took
yes, I do.
Because they were able to craft. I mean, look at the write your own ending stories or choose your own ending. Those have been around forever. Even some of the most popular like books in like the 19th century, like at the end where you got like Sherlock Holmes books started coming out. Those were popular because of his actual process of going through and being very detailed and for looking into the forensics. And it's like you're solving this with him. You're not just seeing a story about a really good detective. You're like kind of like, that's why MacGyver kind of worked as well. Like, you're doing this as well. You know what I mean? Like, you're being engaged. So I think that people look at YouTube now and they look at podcasts, and maybe some people are like, why are they so into this? It's like, people have always been into this. People have always sat around and talked about it, whether it was at the water cooler or the campfire, and they've always really been drawn to stories that embrace the immersion and the engagement in their stories. You just can't say this guy's the best because he's the best. That's a Michael Bay movie, and now they're the best because they beat the worst, and not show the process. You want to workshop it with your people. But I think the final thing I wanted to say is like what I can't think off the top of my head his 4 steps, but what McLuhan states, and it's really true, is that, you know, when new mediums come about, the first thing they do is they make something else obsolete, and which is true. You know, like what I think his analogy is, when cars came around, they made the horse and carriage obsolete, and then what they do is they bring something else back. You know what I mean? They because what happens is you're then stuck. Your ability to move and so many people's ability to freely move in automobiles puts them into traffic jams. So now you have created a new avenue, but then this avenue itself has kind of halted itself because of its efficiency, if that makes any sense. And I think that's what's happening with YouTube is, you know, it's making whatever you want, conventional media, a little bit obsolete, but at the same time, we're halting the spreading of this content because of the amount, the vast quantities of it. So we have to figure out a way to do that without losing the integrity of the like whatever the personal touch of it. So that's why he says that, you know, you create something new, you make something else go away, then something else comes back, and then you revert back again. So that's why I think it's just always going to happen. We will eventually revert. The algorithm is reverting us to a network. It just is what it is.
That's funny too, because look, that brings us back to the audiobook. And literally, what am I doing listening to an audiobook? I'm sitting down at a campfire and I'm letting someone tell me a story. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm doing. Somebody is telling me a story. And it's interesting. But listen, I'm going to have to end it here because I got to go pick up the little guy, Justin. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for being a part of this. I'll give my out and then I'll give you your opportunity. Just, of course, everyone remember, go to DVR Podcast, become a patron. I want to shout out our newest patron, Scotty6, and all our patrons. Go to cufflinks.com, baby. You know it. Check us out at Twitter, DVR Podcast, and join our Facebook group. Congratulations, Dennis. Join the Facebook group. You never know when you're going to win something. Thanks, Justin, again for being here with me. I think we should do. I like us just talking. When we talk, good things happen. So give us your goodbyes, and then I'll have to say goodbye, buddy.
Yeah, talking to you was all right too. I enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Axel. Everybody, just go and subscribe to my channel. It'll be in the link. So no reasons to whore me out too much. But maybe I'll wear my lipstick next week, so you might want to cut that. So, right, thank you, guys.
Have a great weekend. Peace. All right, brother. That was great. Hey, listen, I want to tell you, Justin, about 3 minutes ago, you went out